Greetings to all the friends and colleagues in Taiwan. I've been asked to make some remarks about the current pandemic, which I shall do. In addition, I will describe a little bit about the work that we're undertaking. Pandemic is worse than ever. Despite being a superpower, the US has already suffered 8.6 million infections, with over 225,000 people who have died. With only 4% of the world's population, we have about 20% of the caseload. The situation is not that much better in Western Europe. Countries such as France, Spain, UK, Italy, and Germany, there's a rising caseload in each of these countries. This is obviously tragic. East Asia has fared relatively well, as you could see for Japan, China, and Taiwan. So one might wonder what's causing this drastic difference between East Asia and US, Europe. In the US, it's pretty clear that there was not a great political leadership, nor is there a political will commitment to bring the pandemic under control. So that is a partial explanation. However, a country like Germany has a very able leader who in fact is a scientist who can make proper decisions. And despite that, Germany has suffered now 2 waves of this particular pandemic. So there has to be more. From my perspective, there's behavioral and cultural differences between the East and West. So much emphasis on the West is on freedom, and that sometimes mistakenly is translated into freedom to do whatever one wishes, including not wearing masks. There's also in the West a great deal of emphasis on privacy, and that inhibits testing and contact tracing, which is done so well in places like Taiwan. And of course, in the Eastern culture, there's a great deal of emphasis placed on compliance and patience. And I think that has helped in addressing the pandemic. And in fact, in my own hospital here in New York at the Columbia Medical Center, at one point, we have 80% of the beds occupied by COVID patients, with over 240 patients in the ICU at a given time. I hope that doesn't return. We are forced as a society to be creative to confront this situation. And as you know, necessity is the mother of all inventions. And the scientific community is massively mobilizing to address this pandemic. And every large pharmaceutical company is working on a drug that would attack the virus that causes COVID-19. There's now an approved drug called remdesivir. It's not a magic bullet, but it's somewhat helpful. And other small molecule drugs are being developed by companies like Merck and Pfizer. But there is already a great deal of scientific progress made on the testing front, the vaccine, and antibody fronts. One thing that is happening is the development of a rapid test that would allow us to screen a large population and find those people who are potentially infectious and keep those people away from large gatherings. And on the left side of this graph, you'll see that a schematic diagram showing the amount of virus on the y-axis and days after exposure to the virus on the x-axis. And we now know that within a few days after exposure, there's an explosion of virus replication that takes only 2 to 3 days to reach peak in people who are symptomatic. And then And then this is brought under control over a course of about 10 days in those who are symptomatic. For those without symptoms, the rise is a little bit slower and the decline is a little bit faster. So the overall duration is approximately the same. So the notion that I want you to take away is that being infected does not necessarily equal being infectious. Only a short period constitute infectiousness. It is not intended for diagnostic purposes in the clinic, but rather screening purposes for reopening a society. So all these features demand that the rapid test be simple, cheap, and of course, very fast in timing. In the media, you're hearing a great deal about vaccine, and that's almost all that they talk about. But yet vaccines are only one tool in our toolbox that is necessary to deal with this pandemic. Nevertheless, you could see that there are currently over 200 vaccine candidates in development, and over 50 have made it into clinical trials, either in phase 1, 2, or 3. But none has been proven to be effective or efficacious. But you'll see that there are currently 11 vaccine candidates that have reached phase 3 trial, which is the late stage clinical trial that is trying to determine whether the vaccine is protective or not. And I would say all of these have reached phase 3, meaning that they are reasonably promising with a good chance of success. But we obviously won't know the results for a little bit more. It's possible that some results will begin to emerge in December, but most likely over the first 2 quarters of 2021. And it would not surprise me at all if one or several of these vaccines are shown to be protective. To what extent, we don't know. And for what duration, we don't know. So another solution to that is to develop the antibodies that are targeting the virus and then just give such antibodies. And such antibodies could be used for prevention as well as for treatment. And you may have heard there are a couple of companies that are the front runners, namely Lilly and Regeneron, and there are many others. But all the current ones in clinical trials are targeting the so-called receptor binding region, the RBD of the spike protein. My laboratory has focused on this aspect for many months now, I would say since March, and my team has labored tirelessly to come up with many antibodies, including 10 that are very, very powerful in attacking this RBD region of the spike. But uniquely, we also identify 9 very potent antibodies that attack the NTD region of the spike. And we are supported by the Gates Foundation to take these into development and manufacturing so that the intended use is for the lower and middle income countries throughout the world. One antibody directed to anti-D has been licensed to a large pharmaceutical company in the US, and we anticipate getting into the clinic in Q4, so toward the end of the year. Another antibody has been licensed to a US biotech that is directed to the NTD region of the spike, and it is in clinical development and will likely reach the clinic toward the end of Q1 of next year. And then we have a anti-RBD antibody that's been licensed to TaiMed Biologics, as some of you may have heard, and it is anticipated that it will be ready for human testing toward the end of Q1 of next year. The current massive mobilization on the part of the scientific community will undoubtedly be helpful. It will be a huge boost to the pharmaceutical and biotech sector for years to come and for diseases beyond COVID-19. I think we will have drugs, vaccines, antibodies, better tests, many, many more tools in our toolbox to address this pandemic. I have no doubt that science will deliver a solution ultimately. Thank you very much for listening.